800 races later, and the Scarlet Speedster is starting over. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Dawn of DC Gold Label Collection, The Flash. His name is Wally West. He was the fastest man alive, from Kid Flash to the Flash, from accidental killer to pilot of Metron's Mobius chair. Wally West has lived one of the strangest lives of any speedster, traversing multiple planes of existence just to find his way back home. After the events of Dark Crisis, the DC Universe has been rebooted, and all the heroes in it. Just before we get a closer look at the Dawn of DC, The Flash, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample we could have a look at. The figure, though, is using the same Flash body as before. I'll show that in a second when we bring in the other Flash, but in the meantime, though, this version of Flash is going to stand at almost 7 inches in height, or about 17.5 centimeters tall. In fact, now that I think about it, this Flash mold has been used at least 4 times. There was 2 different variations here of Wally West's Flash, one that had the smile on his face that we're showing right now, one with an angry expression that got packed along with Red Death, and there was also as well the reverse Flash, simply just flipping the colors around. Yeah, I know. Counting on your fingers, I only rhymed off 3. The 4th, and I'm sure there's even been more, is also Black Flash. Don't happen to have a Black Flash here right now. What I do have right now, at least, are the accessories that come included with this version of Flash. Like the figure, first of all, comes included with a display stand. The stand, nothing really new here. It's just a regular black display stand that has, yes, the same DC logo branded down below and one-off neighboring peg that can plug into either one of Wally's boots. The figure also as well comes included with a trading card. The trading card at least is relating to Dawn of DC, and it's not just some random photo of the Flash. Kind of gives you at least an idea of what Flash looks like from this universe. Essentially, they just rebooted everything. Flash and I think Wonder Woman even got tied for 800 issues that they counted clocked in before they kind of just reset the clock. That seems to be something that DC likes to do. But nice looking image overall. It's a pretty simple looking Flash imaged on the front of the card, and then on the back you get the same image of Flash, although just a little bit smaller. The real name, though, is Wally West, and a very simple to read paragraph. I mean, I could just leave it to you guys to read for yourselves. I did also read this at the beginning of the review, so you can also do that as well. We're going to move the card off to the side. He also comes, of course, with some various Speed Force effects, most of which I'm sure we've already gotten before. They're just more rhyme or reason as to whereabouts they actually go. I mean, they give you kind of a suggested idea. There's a hook on the end of it. These are all been done, by the way, using translucent yellow plastic. But you'll see that they have very much a unique hook on the end of it that's going to plug onto anything that you can have success in plugging onto his body. Some of them work a little bit better than others. Like these two, I think, work the best. Actually, even like the arm attachments, if you want to use them, that is, as arm attachments, really hook on the arms the best way. The one I had the hardest time to do is actually this one here. It's split up the middle, but you can see on the end, if I don't drop it, on the end, though, it's supposed to hook onto something, and yet, though, just the way it's configured, it just is a bit of a mess. Again, you can just really decide for yourself whereabouts those exactly want to go. I mean, like if, for example, you want to plug this onto his arms, for example. Now, this would work so much better, though, if you, granted, had the figure in a running pose. If you're just standing him straight like this, I can't imagine he's mustering up much in the way of Speed Force, but basically you just plug them all around his body. Anything, I mean, if it doesn't succeed right here, you just kind of keep continuing to move it around until finally it finds that sweet spot. Anyways, you get those Speed Force effects. Let's move those all off to the side. And getting, though, a closer look now at Dawn of DC, Flash. All in all, though, I like the figure. But all in all, though, I think really what I like about the figure is just the body that we've already gotten before. It takes sort of the cues from the original Flash and just at least darkens the color to give us more primary colored Flash. Things like, for example, if you didn't love the idea that he had lightning bolts jetting out from the middle of his emblem, those are gone. You didn't have to commit at all to that. I mean, even with these being not molded, I mean, they were just only painted in place. It's a whole lot easier for them to just simply use the body again without having to retool anything on the front of the torso. The emblem is going to be the same placement. It's sculpted the exact same way. The thing that's obviously a little bit different is, to be really honestly fair, even though the emblem is molded over top of the body, you can clearly also see as well that the lightning bolt is different. This one has several different zigzags. This only has, whoa, I'm throwing flashes across the room. This one only has just a single zigzag. Probably what they just ended up doing was, obviously, if this is just an extra bit of plastic, it's so easier for just them to mold the whole body and then just take the plastic piece and glue it over top of the body. So that's one thing. If I wasn't throwing flashes across the room, that's one thing that's easiest things to do, is just simply change out the emblem, just because it doesn't belong to the body anyways. The little lightning bolts that he has down below by his belt, that's also something that carries over from the original release, and he also has the same lightning bolts there on his gloves. He gets still the yellow boots, and I promise this time I'm not going to throw you Flash. He gets the yellow boots, but they are nicely painted this time, or more so, they're probably molded here in yellow plastic. Something about the original boots, they seemed a little pale, like almost as if they tried to paint it and they couldn't get, or they couldn't arrive on the right yellow. Something that's also very interesting, though, about the feet is if you look at the bottom of them, the sculpting of this CE, not that that's really a big deal, but it seems a little bit more noticeable on the newer Flash than on the original release. The yellows and the reds are handled, I feel, better here on the Dawn of DC Flash. And so you would arrive on the idea that I like this Flash a little bit more. There's one thing I don't like necessarily about the figure, and you're looking at it right now. It's the head sculpt. I like these on the side, even though they're a little warped. There's only just a little bit of thin plastic here kind of keeping the little wings there attached to the sides of his head. I would be a little bit worried about that. Those look good. I don't know if I love, though, the head sculpt. There's a couple of things that don't work for me necessarily. I like a smiling Flash, but there's something looking a little sinister about this version of him. It may not help the fact that, first of all, his face is super shiny, but also that they've darkened the areas around his eyes. Now, normally, white-eyed Flash would work well for me, but there's something by adding now a dark area around it that makes the figure almost look more like a villain than an actual hero. Again, when we looked at, say, and I'm not going to throw you this time, when we looked at the original Flash, obviously he doesn't have white eyes. He would just have his regular eyes underneath the mask. So it's kind of hard to compare the two if you are like myself, who likes more just the white pupiled Flash. This one, for the most part, does it well, except for the fact, again, I just feel like the darker area around his eyes is maybe just too stark. Again, it also seems, too, like his face is a little too shiny. If you're looking at that and you're looking at the rest of his body, even though really the plastic that they've used for the red is a little more on the reflective nature, it doesn't seem nearly as shiny as it is for the head. Again, I don't know what they necessarily have done differently, whether they went and painted this all in, where this would be just molded in red plastic. But there's something a little jarring, though, about the face. The gold doesn't match in all the places, like, say, for example, the yellow or the gold that he has on the front of his emblem matches fairly well to the one that he has around his belt. Yet, though, if you're looking at it and you're comparing the two, the yellow that he has on his gloves doesn't quite match the same yellow that they used here. It also isn't matching, really, if I bring this really close like this, it doesn't quite really even match the boots. So this looks like they would have just molded this in the plastic. This they would have painted. But I wish that the boots could have been painted in that same sort of gold yellow that they use for everything else on the figure's body, that at least is that color. For the figure's articulation, no, it's going to be all the same retained articulation as the other earlier looked at Flash. So yes, this version of Flash does have a ball joint. You can rotate the head all the way around. It looks up, it looks down, and it looks also back and forth as well. They're kind of going with more the new frontier look to Flash, kind of more of a classic look. But again, there's something not quite arriving with the way they painted the head sculpt. I have to just kind of wonder if maybe they had not painted this area in dark black, if the figure's face would have worked a little bit better. Anyways, as for the arms hinge out at 90 degrees. There's no real problems there. You can rotate the arms all the way around on both sides. The figure does have a swivel in his bicep. He also as well possesses a double hinge on his elbow, and the hands do rotate all the way around. The upper torso, like with the original Flash, is on a ball joint. The lower abdomen area right here also is on a ball joint, so you can rotate that all the way around. The figure is going to have a softer sort of lower trunk area. Some have coined the figure diaper. It isn't so much a diaper. As you can see, it conforms a little bit better to his legs, but it does a decent enough job of hiding the articulation inside the ankles, or inside the thighs. His ankles are down there. Legs go forward, legs go back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. Double hinge once again on the knees. Even though this seems to be a separate applied piece, there's no articulation at all for the boots. Ankles move back and forth this way. He also as well has an ankle rocker, and the figure does have toe articulation as well. You know, again, like looking at the figure, for all intents and purposes, I would say this is an ideal looking Flash. It kind of takes what I liked about the Flash, having more white pupils than, say, for example, this version of Flash, which again, we'll just move over and bring back in this version of Flash. You know, I liked, again, like the mold that they used, but, you know, the face didn't always 100% work for me. This Flash, for the most part, should work for me, because now instead of having his just regular human eyes sticking out the cowl, he now has, again, white eyes. But there, again, is some problems with the paints, and I think for this, they just arrived on the wrong ideas. Giving him the smile wasn't so much the deal breaker, but painting around the areas of the eyes is sort of now where you're taking a superhero, and you're giving him almost more of a villainous look. Overall, though, the figure does look good, because I already liked the initial mold for the figure. The thing, though, I like also about this is that they're using more richer colors. The red and the yellow, even though, again, like the yellow in the boots, don't quite jive with the coloring that they use for the gloves, the boots, and, of course, the side ear fins. The colors don't necessarily work, but at least the colors are a little richer than the original Flash. My takeaway from all this, if there was to be a takeaway, is that it looks more to a Flash that I would have wanted in my collection, but it's still not quite arriving at the finish line with a perfect finished looking Flash that actually looks perfect. If anything, I would say, like, if anything, maybe if they had just lightened up the areas around his eyes, maybe if the smile, again, is not a deal breaker at all, but I think if anything, it's the darker color that's ruining the figure of the Flash for me. Making use of only the 2 of the provided 4 Speed Force effects, I've got the Flash looking as if he's skidding into the scene. I don't think I necessarily need all 4 Speed Force effects. I think most of the time, usually when I display my Flash doing something on the shelf other than just standing straight, I usually just use 2. I think it kind of becomes a little more excessive. I mean, yeah, if you want to have him in a running pose, I suppose you could pull that off. But a lot of times it's just a guessing game the way that they're molded. You get the idea that the smaller ones are supposed to go somewhere on his arms. The longer, bigger ones are supposed to go somewhere on his legs. And just outside of that, it's just to you and Lady Luck to decide whereabouts they go on the figure. I guess they do a good enough job. I guess, if anything, I'm glad to see at least they included it. Because if not for that, the figure, unfortunately, would only be relegated to a trading card and a display stand. Though for the figure itself, one other included accessory, which is one thing that doesn't seem to be something that's ever packed with Flashes. He gets a running kind of flat hand, as you'll see it's up right now in final looks, and then he has a closed fist. That is one thing that's kind of consistent with a lot of Flashes. You get sort of that flat hand like it looks like he's supposed to be swinging around at a fly, and then you always get sort of a closed fist. I do kind of wish that they could have also included an alternate hand, because if you're ever just planning to have the Scarlet Speedster displayed standing, then it looks a little out of place that he has this weird stuck-out finger hand, because it doesn't look like it belongs there on the figure. The one other thing I would certainly say outside of the complaints, I wouldn't even call them necessarily complaints, the critiques that I may have mentioned about the head sculpt, is that looking at the source material for the Dawn of DC Flash, it does seem though that the emblem is a little bit more white. Unfortunately, by molding all the lightning bolt and the ring around it, it doesn't leave much really for the white to show out, and I think maybe they probably could have shrunk the size down, or instead of molding the lightning bolt and the ring as 2 pieces, maybe if they had just molded as one flat piece and then just filled the details in rather with paint than molding. Of course, going back to the head sculpt is good, but I think it could be so much better. I think it gives me at least a Flash that I would have liked on my shelf with white eyes instead of his visible pupils, but what it unfortunately also gives me is a very ominous looking Flash. The darker colors around the eyes, I think I get where they were going with, but I think there's just too much of it. Or, instead of going with such a dark color, had they only just gone with one shade darker than the plastic, it would have at least suggested the idea that there's shadowing around his eyes, without making it look like he's got raccoon eyes. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you guys had the chance to pick up the Dawn of DC Flash? Or, if this isn't a Flash that's to your liking, what would you say so far is the best Flash we've gotten from McFarlane's team? Speaking, though, of McFarlane's team, I'd like to thank the team over there that provided the sample of the Dawn of DC Flash that we had the chance to have a look at in this review. If you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and want to stick around for more, we will, by the way, be looking at more DC Multiverse reviews, Multiverse figures, that is, in upcoming reviews. If you need your fix for right now, at least popping up at the very end of this video will be playlist. One from McFarlane Toys, one for DC Multiverse. Feel free to give those a watch if you have a little bit of time on your flat fly swatting hands. Definitely need to get some extra hands for this guy. If in the meantime, though, you guys want to stick around for more, make sure you hit that subscribe, make sure you turn on the bell, but most importantly, make sure you're coming back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.